Afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is having a great day. I haven't made any notification that I'm gonna go live because I wanted to go live tomorrow, but I looked at my schedule and tomorrow is a little bit packed. So I've got way too many readings and I've got the full moon report to prepare as well for my members. And this full moon is a very busy full moon. It's going to be featuring, of course, the Uranus-Mercury conjunction, Mercury retrograde, as well as 5 asteroids, for example, Ixion, and so forth. So, therefore, yes, so that's why I decided that we are going to be doing the Mercury retrograde for 12 signs today. And we are going to be meeting on Saturday afternoon, my time zone, to discuss Jupiter in Leo. I think everyone is going to be super interested in that, right? Because Jupiter is the great benefic, and we are hoping that it's going to be bringing super good things into our lives. And I do believe that potentially this Jupiter is going to be good. You know, I prefer Jupiter in the sign of Leo over Jupiter in Cancer, but more on that on Saturday. Guys, you're going to see me a lot because July is seriously the most important month of the year. I mean, there are so many things happening. It's Jupiter moving into Leo. We're going to have the nodal change. We're going to have Jupiter opposing Pluto. But we have got the mini grand trine happening between the outer planets. That mini grand trine is actually something that you cannot really go back in time and kind of figure out when it happened the very last time. So it will be super interesting to see how that might be playing out in our lives. But, you know, one thing that I would like to mention is that a sextile is just an opportunity. So if you are not kind of creating the opportunity for yourself, if you are not trying to reach something with those outer planets, guess what? Nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to go, nothing is going to be presented to you on a silver plate. So I highly recommend, for example, to take advantage of my readings right now, which is still 30% discounted until the end of the week, because we're going to have to put together a blueprint. We're going to have to come up with an action plan, especially if you have got planets between 0 to 4 degree in your natal chart or solar arc chart or your progress chart. Because then surely this year is a turning point for you. And I've been talking about this for a while, and many of you have commented that, for example, you've got 5 planets around 4 degree, 4 degree. So that is surely a turning point for someone. So who has got any planets on 4 degree of any of the signs really? It doesn't matter. It can be anywhere. But do you have any planets on exactly 4 degree? Because then I think, yeah, you have to be riding that bike. You have to be jumping on that. And you have to make this mini grand trine, or we can call it as a kite configuration, but Jupiter is only going to be triggering the kite configuration for a little while. But surely the Leo and the Aquarius people are going to be very impacted this year because Jupiter in Leo, and then the nodes are moving into the sign of Leo and Aquarius as well. So it will be an interesting ride, 2026, surely. I think the last time when I said this is going to be a big year was 2019 when I was making my predictions to 2020. So this is almost as big as 2020. I can kind of guarantee that. Hi, Evita from Austria. My son has a few 4 or 5 degrees, soon to be 8. Yeah, that was actually a question that came up, I think, in one of my YouTube videos. And I think I replied to that question today on the comment section. My son has got those. And basically what happens is that whatever goes down in the lives of the parents, obviously that's going to be affecting a young child. So often this is what shows up in a chart of a child is actually not happening to them. It happens in the family, and then of course it's affecting them as well, in a positive or in a negative way, of course. So imagine that you win the lottery and then all of a sudden you decide that, I don't know, you're going to be quitting your job or stuff like that. So that is going to be affecting your baby as well. So that's the storyline there. So, but let's get to our agenda. Today we are talking about Mercury retrograde for 12 signs, okay? And yesterday we did a 1 hour report on how Mercury in the sign of Cancer is going to be playing out. So I highly recommend listening to that video because that has got a lot of information and you just need to put it into your natal chart. Here, I'm just going to give you a couple of pointers to kind of think about. But I want to give you a 2-4 minute summary on how Mercury retrograde is going to be kind of like acting out in the sign of Cancer, and all that asteroid and all that planetary alignments that I have given you. Remember, this Mercury retrograde features the Mars and Uranus conjunction as well. So the keywords that you might want to kind of take note of is nostalgia, rumination, going down on a memory lane. It's something to do with defensive kind of like speeches, listening to your gut feelings, processing thoughts through feelings, overthinking past choices, looking through old psychological kind of archives, and the internal mind wants to kind of retreat into its own shell. Also, we can go down on a like a regret loop as well. I should have done this, I shouldn't have said that, and so forth. So any type of sentences that you create which should have, shouldn't have, that might be a representation of certain type of guilt, mental loops, mental stuckness. But also, you might be just replaying old arguments in your head, wishing you had maybe different, or you had chosen a different path. You have chosen different words. I don't know, years ago, maybe 11 months ago, 22 months ago, and so forth. So we did a bit of a debunking of the myth of Mercury retrograde as well in yesterday's video. So I highly recommend kind of like listening to that. Now, the Mars and Uranus conjunction in Gemini is just as important because it's being disposed by Mercury. So that is kind of like a nervous system overload, erratic communication, shocking revelations, a bit of an impatience, snapping at someone, often over little minor details, right? But also remember that this is happening on the day of the full moon, the Capricorn full moon, which I'm going to be doing a live presentation about for my members, YouTube members, or it's for my membership program on my website. So if you are interested, you might want to join us if you can. But that Capricorn full moon is kind of like about unyielding rules, bureaucratic limits, duty versus desire, for example. It's kind of like running into a brick wall, right? And also we had asteroid Hygiea being important here, which is a psychological and physical kind of hygiene, which represents having to clean up something. We have to be purging toxicity. Then we had Aurora and Aphrodite. All these yesterday we spoke about, right? So Aurora is the new dawn, is the new beginning. Aphrodite is very much about romanticizing the past, using our charm as kind of like a weapon, but also it could represent emotional allure as well. And we had even asteroid Aries being in the picture too, which is a warrior energy, which is a whistleblower. So these are the keywords that we need to remember. Now, it's time to share the screen, and then we can kind of like look at how this is going to be playing out for everyone. Would you still do astrology if you won the lottery? Absolutely. 70% of the lottery winners are, they go busted. And one thing you need to know about me is that I've got a stellium in my 10th house. I love working. I have never had issues with working. People do actually ask me, how do you do all these things by yourself? Well, I do have one admin, and he takes off a huge pressure off of my shoulders, but I do my preparation, I teach, I train, right? I do one-to-one classes and so forth. And I am kind of like never tired because this is something that I like doing. So yeah, I would work if I won the lottery. Would I work as much as right now? Maybe not so much. Maybe I wouldn't do, let's say, 3 readings a day, and I wouldn't be teaching 4 times a week. And maybe I wouldn't be doing, I don't know, 4 or 5 live videos a week, but I would still work for sure. So let me share the screen. You guys should be able to see it, hopefully. So you can see the chart, and then we are on Aries rising sign. So Aries, in case you are just watching your bits, then welcome back to my channel. We are talking about Mercury going retrograde on 29th of June. This is going to be more than 2 months of a period, really. Not the retrogression, but Mercury spending time in the sign of Leo. Remember, Mercury is making a conjunction to Jupiter. We've got Hygeia, Aurora, Aphrodite, and Aries being involved as well. And this Mercury retrograde features the full moon also. So when Mercury stations retrograde, it is happening in your 4th house, the house of past and the house of roots. Your mind is kind of like being dragged backwards into the past. Your long-term memory is kind of like really sharp right now, but it can easily turn into a trap of deep regret. So you might find yourself like looping through old childhood matters or patterns, or you're kind of like rethinking your family dynamics, your upbringings. Maybe you kind of say something like, I should have handled that domestic situation differently years ago, or I shouldn't have sold this property, or I should have taken care of my parents, or I should have been better. I should have been a better parent as well. But look at who Mercury is sitting with, right? So firstly, it sits with Hygeia. Hygeia demands kind of like a sanitization. It's the purging of those emotional toxicity. It is telling you that you're going to have to find ways of stopping to going down on that memory lane 24/7. It's like you are performing a psychological surgery on your home environment, and therefore you can really use this period of time to have healing conversations with others. But let's make it like a 20-minute conversation rather than I'm going to be talking about this for 2 months, because what's going to happen is that, of course, you are going to be ending up just keep bringing up the same topics over and over again. Yes, this could indicate that you are meant to be digesting the past as well. So you cannot just sweep things under the carpet and then, the problem is going to vanish itself. Now, right alongside Hygeia, we have got Aphrodite and Aurora in the picture as well, which is about the temptation to romanticize the past. Maybe you are making this nostalgic version of the home, like, I wish my parents were still alive. I wish, I was living with them and so forth. But Aurora represents the dawn. It represents the new beginning. It represents that if you do the heavy lifting right now, that emotional cleansing, the review, then basically you are going to be able to close down something, and therefore it leads to a mental awakening, and you are going to be able to kind of like start, for example, a better family life, a better connection with your parents, a better connection with your old version as well. Now, remember that we have got the full moon happening as well. So the full moon is running through your fourth and 10th house. Well, the full moon actually happens in your 10th house, which is the house of career, status, your public reputation. So this is a bit of a brutal real world clash between your duties as well as your emotional reality. I mean, imagine that you are dealing with a very intense family situation. Maybe a member of your family is sick, for example, and it requires your full presence, but you have got work to attend. Your boss is not necessarily understanding, and they don't want to give you the day off that you need. But I can also imagine that you would like to have a sabbatical, or you would like to just kind of like stop, like you would like to work from home to be able to take care of your parents. And because of rigid legal contractual agreement, it's kind of like impossible. Or because one rule applies to everyone, and then we cannot kind of like, give you the benefits in that sense. So it's kind of like when the boss tells you business is business, leave your personal life at the door when you walk in. And of course, it's super difficult. So this is bringing up the topic of work and life balance scenarios. I believe that the full moon is also showing you where you have been kind of like over-regulating yourself as well, where you have followed the rules of society or the expectations of the parents, the expectations of your career, your family as well. But what if it's at the expense of your emotional sanity, right? So the question that is coming with this Mercury retrograde: what good is winning out in the world for like a peaceful life, What is kind of like crumbling me? What is toxic, for example, either in my work or in my home life? And how are you going to respond to this tension? I think it's going to be very important to remember with the Mars and Uranus conjunction, which is, of course, taking place in your third house. And Mercury retrograde is squaring, I deserve justice. I'm not being treated fairly. So the response to it could be quite aggressive, for example. It could be a lot of arguments. And of course, therefore, the entire family dynamics could become, for example, quite like an emotional turmoil. I think Aries rising sign is naturally someone who is direct, but this configuration somehow turns your words into more of a lightning bolts. So that's why that frantic, kind of volatile itch comes into the picture, that I want to be speaking the unfiltered truth, the shocking truth. This could indicate that you're going to get to know a piece of information, for example, about a member of your family, and you are going to be completely shocked, for example. When that rigid Capricorn part of your chart demands, that I have to follow the rules, I have to be kind of like living the legacy of my parents. But Aries rising sun, you were born to be independent. And it feels like that you might be kind of like the elephant in the room in a way. Okay, and maybe something that you would like to start fresh, others not necessarily like that. I mean, maybe people that you live together with, or parents, or even your husband or your kids, and so forth. So it's like I'm starting something, but I might be regretting that later on. You might start kind of like stewing over the consequences of those heavy words and discussions that you seem to be having. So that's going to be the Aries rising sign energy. I have planets at 3 degree, but as per Vedic system, I don't use Vedic astrology, so I cannot necessarily comment on that. But I have been having arguments with a Vedic astrologer recently. And not because I don't believe in Vedic astrology, I think the system works. But the reason why we are having argument is because he is basically slandering Western astrology. It's BS, it's not good, no one should go there, and all these type of things. And I'm like, come on, why do we have to do such things? You don't have to blindly believe in your system. Have an open mind, because I can really relate to both of my charts, but in, different stages of my life. So, because there are two, and this is coming up very often. This question comes up every single day on my news feed. People are asking, okay, so which one is better, Vedic astrology or tropical astrology? There is no such thing which one is better. It really depends on the person anyway, who is going to be translating the meanings of those planetary energies. So, but anyway, let's not get into that. Maybe I will do a recorded video on my views with, the differences between Vedic astrology and tropical astrology, because they're not the same systems. But let's do Taurus rising sign. So, Taurus, if you are watching, we are touching base on Mercury retrograde, which is falling into your third house. We are also discussing a bit of a full moon, as well as we are talking about the Uranus and Mars conjunction, because these are actually all happening on the same day and they are connected. So Mercury is stationing retrograde on 26 degree of Cancer, which is your third house. That's the house of mindset, daily logistics, neighborhood, kind of like your siblings as well, your mindset. And it is kind of walking hand in hand with Jupiter, which is expanding whatever it touches. So with Mercury stationing retrograde in your third house, it feels like that your mind is going into a review mode. It is somehow you start kind of like remembering, for example, old arguments. You might go back and read old text messages, for example, or you start remembering what things others might have said to you, let's say 11 months ago, 22 months ago, 33 months ago, and you start trying to make sense of those emails, text messages, and so forth. And therefore, maybe, I shouldn't have replied that way, or this person shouldn't have said that, or I should have said this, and so forth. Or maybe you even come up with, like, why did I let them manipulate the narrative? Why did I not stand up for myself? You can start thinking about all these type of stuff. Yes, modern pop astrology is going to tell you with Mercury retrograde, do not buy a phone, especially if it's in your third house, or the car. So if 11 months ago your car broke down, it's actually highly possible that you're going to have to take your car back to get it fixed again this time around. So yes, that could be a meaning of that. But this Mercury retrograde conjunct Hygeia, which is about mental health, mental well-being. So the real message for you, Taurus, is that you have to rewrite your narratives. You have to kind of rewrite the way you feed your mind. Are you surrounded by negative member of family, like negative family members? Or does your neighbor, keep telling you, I don't know, about politics, and it's just dragging you down and you're kind of like tired of that? So your local environment could feel a little bit toxic right now. And you become very aware of this toxicity, um, or gossip, or certain type of mental habits as well, which might even make you kind of like physically sick. So you somehow have to decide that you're going to cut out this noise. Remember, we have got Aurora and Aphrodite here as well. And Aphrodite definitely tempts you to romanticize old connections, or you might want to be using kind of sweet words, for example, with that neighbor first. Like you might try to tell them nicely, sugarcoating the truth in a way that, listen, I don't necessarily want to talk about politics, but the delivery, the way of delivery might not be able to make them understand that you are not willing to talk about, I don't know, politics or the past or whatever it is. Okay. Or you might realize that a sibling of yours is kind of like emotionally draining and you cannot take it anymore. And maybe you decide to walk away from that connection as well. Now, we have got the full moon happening in your third and ninth house also. And this is a clash. A full moon is always a bit of a clash, but also it's an exposing energy. And a clash between your immediate environment, the emotional reality, and kind of like the overarching system or belief system that you have created. So, this is really about rewiring your brain, rewiring your scripts as well, because some of us are super negative, right? We only think of the worst all the time. And Mercury makes a conjunction to Jupiter, and Jupiter is about the positive mindset. So we have to think positively that things are going to play out well. And because Mercury rules your second house, you might have been very anxious about money. Money started being like all over the place. I don't know, you don't get the pay rise, but the expenditure is growing. It's super, I don't know, expensive to buy a pound of steak at the shop and I cannot afford it. So we can go down on that mental loop. We can start thinking about like how much money we used to make in the past, how much money. My grandmother had Mercury in Cancer, and she was always talking about um, oh, I used to buy a loaf of bread for 1 penny. And then look at it now. It costs, I don't know, this much. It costs €1, for example. So what type of a world we live in? We can go down on that memory lane. Is that going to give you a solution? So Uranus and Mars says to you that you're going to have to find new ways of monetizing your talents. You're going to have to find new ways of making income, basically, so that you can confidently go to the shop and then, buy that loaf of bread for yourself. That Capricorn full moon is illuminating where you have let dogmatic, rigid rules or kind of like even institutional expectations over-regulate the way you think. It's like when the boss is telling you that you are not allowed to speak. A parent of yours is telling you that you are not allowed to speak. And that is somehow influencing your daily choices, even your daily plans as well. It's like, I don't know, you are 45 years old and your mom is still telling you that you cannot go to have a glass of wine with your friends. So the question here is, why do I allow them to set these rigid rules when I'm already a grown-up person? So it's like, I want to be talking about this truth, even though it's hard, even though, let's say, I don't want to be hurting the feelings of others, but I need to be able to talk about that. Now, like I said, Mercury disposes Mars and Uranus conjunction also uh, in your second house. And that's not only about money, but that's also your self-worth. So it really feels like that you have got some self-worth issues, confidence issues, and all of a sudden this is kind of fluctuating. And in one moment, I've got the confidence to kind of lash out, to say out loud what I truly feel. And then the next moment, we're going to kind of regret that. So we need a bit of a planning here. We need to talk about the truth, but I'm going to plan it out. I'm going to kind of look for the perfect moment. But also, of course, the second house is all about money as well. So you might be thinking that you are undercompensated, you are undervalued, for example, for all the work that you do and so forth. And you might want to speak up about it. Aries is in your 12th house. So that's something like a subconscious enemy there. That it's like an irresistible energy, actually. It's like, I want to be exposing some hypocrisies. And that's why with Aries as well, words can be kind of like flying out of our mouth, kind of like at lightning speed. And yeah, so you understand how we can get into certain type of arguments and so forth. Maybe, it's going to be a simple conversation, I don't know, about a document, a contract, an invoice, for example. And then that can turn into a lot more, right? And we start discussing that you never support me, you never gave me a penny, you never gave me. Can you guys hear me? I am still connecting. Oh, you can hear me now. Yes, Mercury is starting right now. So you guys can hear me? Because it still says on my screen that reconnecting. You can hear me. So interesting because, okay, it's just disappeared now. So let me repeat what I said, but it still says reconnecting. So surely you can hear me? Okay, you can hear me. Great. So I was talking about Aries in your 12th house, where basically that's kind of like a subconscious enemy there. You want to be kind of exposing hypocrisies. You want to be kind of like going again down on that memory lane and, this is how you lie to me. This is how you kind of scam me. This is how you promised me things and then it never got delivered. And then you might end up kind of like collecting all the emails, for example, all the text messages. All of a sudden, the mind starts remembering the ways basically you have been kind of screwed. So the sentence that I can kind of imagine you say is that I have been keeping quiet to keep the peace, but you know what? Here is the raw data. I cannot tolerate anymore these lies. I cannot tolerate anymore these shenanigans. And now I'm rewriting the rules. There is, of course, a catch with it. So this is an angry outburst, right? With that Uranus, Mars, and the Aries being in the picture. And it's a kind of like an emotional backlash. This is something that we might be regretting later on. Okay? So Taurus rising sign for you, are not, you shouldn't be suppressing your voice, surely, but just be a little bit more calculative about how you deliver your message because it could come across quite brutal. So let's move on to Gemini rising sign. It still says we are reconnecting. So I'm just wondering if anyone is watching from Facebook, anyone is watching from YouTube. So if you can type in YouTube, I can hear you. Facebook, I can hear you. So that I know that you hear me everywhere, because my screen is still saying that connection lost, reconnecting. So I'm just wondering if we are recording, and is this video gonna be all good? You know, or really we are in a Mercury kind of like retrograde period. We can hear you on YouTube. Thank you very much. One is YouTube. Thank you. Anyone from Facebook, maybe? I tried connecting to Instagram as well, but for some reason, I'm not allowed to do that. And I couldn't figure out how to do that. So Facebook can hear me as well. Okay, so you hear me everywhere. Great. So let's move on to Gemini rising sign. So Gemini, it's an important Mercury for you, of course, not because it goes retrograde in your first house, but because it rules you. And it's not just Mercury retrograde, but we have got the Uranus and Mars conjunction as well, which is happening right around your rising sign. And that's you. That's your physical body. That's your identity. That's your personal autonomy. Those are basically your personal choices, things that you want to achieve. So welcome back to my channel, Gemini rising sign. If you are watching, then we are talking about the Mercury retrograde, which is taking place in your second house. But there are many other things that are happening as well at the same time. We have got the full moon, we have got the Uranus and Mars conjunction. So with Mercury stationing retrograde in your second house, your mind is turning towards kind of like looking at the material side of life. You are looking at security. And this might be a lot of kind of like reflection on money. And you might be saying things like, oh, I shouldn't have spent money. I shouldn't have bought that car. I shouldn't have invested into a property, and so forth. So you can be looping through past financial choices, thinking, if I didn't spend that money, now I would be able to, I don't know, get the car fixed, and so forth. You know, one of my favorite quote, actually, and I want to say that because, you know, many people say to smokers, oh my days, if you didn't smoke, how much money would you save? And those people who don't smoke are not millionaires either. And then when they kind of throw this rough figure at you, how much money you would save a year, for example, if you stop smoking, look, you would have, I don't know, $10,000 extra. Yeah, so where is the $10,000 for those who are not smoking, right? So what I'm trying to say, Gemini rising sign, is that you don't need to regret buying something for yourself, I don't know, 11 months ago. Of course, we don't want to be throwing money out of the window, but that's the past. You've done that. So what's the point in me kind of thinking about it all the time and beating myself up for it? But also at the same time, it could talk to you about, why did I compromise my rules or my values for safety? That could be another question that you might be coming up with. Now, because Mercury conjunct Hygeia represents prevention. Typically, this is a medical asteroid, but here this would talk to us about potentially, I'm trying to come up ways of saving money because I'm trying to prevent running out of money. So it feels like that you are ending up going to the shop and then you might be looking at deals. You know, these deals are so funny because I think we end up buying, you know, let's say you go to, I don't know, City Sport shop, and then you just want to buy a pair of shoes, but you see that there is sales on, and then, you know, it's all psychological. And actually that's what Mercury kind of like represents in Cancer in the second house, how we are psychologically triggered to, let's say, have a reading, to buy a reading, and so forth. And because Jupiter is there, the danger is that we are ending up spending more money than we actually expected. Now, this might be also with Hygeia, this might be telling you that you have to be looking at your financial dependencies. Like, am I dependent on someone? Am I getting enough emotional support? And remember, we have got the full moon happening as well at the same time. So the moon is in your eighth house, other people's money, and the sun is in the second house, which is my money. So this is very much about whether there is a balance here, how we share financial obligations, for example. And maybe the Capricorn part of your chart says there are certain rules within this family that, I don't know, you pay the rent and then I'm going to be, I don't know, buy the food. But maybe this rule is getting thrown out of the window. And then your second house cusp starts getting worried about how I'm going to be able to pay the rent and so forth. So Aphrodite, which loves beautiful things, also an indication of overspending money. It's kind of like happening on an emotional whim, really. Or if you have got any type of financial conflicts with Aphrodite, we want to be kind of like smoothing that over. And then we have got Aurora there, which is actually a new beginning. Now, what I'm kind of imagining here with second and eighth house activations, the eighth house represents passive income. So it feels like the Gemini rising sign is thinking about getting an additional job, for example, maybe just a few hours a week and so on, so that I can support second house, let's say, my children, or being able to pay the rent and so on. But also, this full moon is illuminating in a way that you have to be doing a bit of an internal audit about how money is kind of like running into that, into your wallet, and what you do with your money, basically. Like, the full moon is always an illumination, and it actually illuminates the house of taxes, inheritance, bank loans, your partner's money, even your client's money as well. So there is a clash happening between your money and someone else's money, or your money and a financial entity, for example. Like, that's why I'm keep talking about paying the rent, for example, or the mortgage and these type of stuff. And it somehow seems to be that you are trying to do this healthy budgeting somehow. You are trying to change the way you make living as well. But it also feels like that you run headfirst into this cold, kind of like unyielding bureaucratic rule, maybe a very rigid bank contract, or maybe you are delayed by a couple of days to be able to pay the rent, and the landlord says no, the deadline is on the 18th, and they are not showing any compassion that you are only going to be late 2 days and so forth. Someone who is insisting, enforcing these strict kind of traditional rules over shared funds as well. So you feel like that you are not being understood. Also, this full moon is illuminating where you have allowed external financial systems, or kind of like psychological contracts as well, psychological debts, to over regulate of how much money you spend on yourself. Okay? I mean, what good is playing by rigid rules being set by others, like how much money I can spend on myself? And then you can feel entirely disempowered, or you can feel financially trapped. So Mercury goes retrograde and thinking about how I can get out of this financial entanglement. But where does the breakout happen? The breakout happens in your first house, because Mercury disposes Uranus and Mars conjunction, which says that the breakout is that I'm going to be making a choice, and I'm going to be selfish, and I'm going to be choosing myself. And what could be happening here is that because you are kind of like walking on a lightning rod, you can get into arguments about money as well. It feels like that you have zero tolerance for people who are trying to control your time, wasting your time, and so on. Now, another scenario, because we have been talking about money quite a lot, right? But you might be making a decision to change your eating habits. The second house represents food. The first house is your physical body. And the eighth house actually can represent for me at least food sensitivities. So you might figure out, yes, figure out that you have got certain type of food sensitivities, and therefore you are going to be making changes, lifestyle choices, changes in your diet. So I can definitely imagine such things as well. Um, it feels like that you are meant to be changing the terms of a deal. That's the message here. And Mercury has to think it through how it's going to be beneficial for me. It is telling you that I'm done compromising my time, energy, and money to kind of fit into a structure. So my money is my money. Your money is your money. This is my time, so please respect it. So that's how the energy seems to be working out for Gemini rising sign. So you guys can hear me. That's great. So let's move on to Cancer rising sign. You should be able to see the screen, I believe. Cancer rising sign. Of course, Mercury goes retrograde in your first house, which is you. That's your identity, physical body, appearance, your personal directions. And the Capricorn full moon happens in your seventh house, which is the house of collaboration, marriage, business partnership, contractual agreement, even legal kind of like arguments as well. And Mars Uranus conjunction is in your 12th house, which is your subconscious secrets. So what it really feels like, Cancer, firstly, if you are watching, then welcome back to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all those lovely things. I always forget to say that, but that's actually for a YouTuber very important because we want more followers, right? So, but what really happens is that Mercury goes retrograde in your first house. And this is not necessarily an external event, or not only an external event. It's a little bit of a internal kind of like collision between who you are becoming and what people are expecting from you. The expectation comes from Capricorn full moon, actually. And it feels like that you are meant to be having the courage to break out of this mental, emotional loop that you have to be, let's say, a perfect mom. You have to be a perfect wife. You have to be meeting the expectations of others. And maybe this is something to do with a boss of yours, because Aries is in your 10th house. So you get up into argument with a boss of yours. And this Mercury retrograde is telling you that I have to choose my emotional, physical well-being. There is no kind of like choice about that. It is telling you that I have to be choosing myself. But it feels like you are scared to do so. Why is that? Is because Mercury rules Uranus and Mars conjunction in your 12th house, and it feels like it's an internal struggle. It's an internal battlefield for you. There is the little daredevil that is telling you that, yes, let's get out of here, Let's, I don't know, punch them in the face. Let's go on an attack mode. But at the same time, the 12th house is kind of like a little bit of a scary cat. So it is unsure whether I should go and then choose freedom or I should be choosing safety first. So what this is kind of like a bit of a regret loop, right? Like we have discussed that before. And I can imagine, for example, like you are going to say something like, why did I say yes to this person? Why did I say yes to this contract? Why did I let myself be treated that way, for example, by the boss? So you can start, like, imagine that the boss has been super rude to you, and then you go home. Cancer rising sign loves a good cry, and then it starts overindulging, especially with Jupiter being there, with good cakes and homemade food and stuff like that, mac and cheese, something hearty. Jupiter represents hearty food. And then we start kind of like thinking about it. Why did I let them treat me that way? I should have said something. That Uranus and Mars is kind of like gonna tickle your mind a little bit. It's in the house of regrets, sorrow, grief. So it feels like you aren't just brooding, but you are kind of like beating yourself up in a way. And there is Hygeia there as well, which is a medical asteroid. So it does talk to us about having to purify the body, as well as it talks to us about mental hygiene. It's a psychological surgery on yourself, on your life direction. This might be an indication that it's time to change the gears. And we have to sit down and we're going to have to come up with a strategy for that. You have to be looking at your toxic habits, your toxic work environments, for example, your self sacrificing behaviors, something that is making you physically sick. It's like I want to throw up when I look at that person. And it's another person because there is that full moon happening in your seventh house. It's not necessarily your partner, okay? It could be any type of person that you are in contract with. And I think you are trying to use your natural, kind of like nicer side to smooth the situation at first. And you might be even kind of agreeable about something. But the awakening moment here is that I shouldn't agree to things that is kind of like, it's not good for me, basically. So there is a huge indication of self care. And this is where this full moon becomes a little bit more of a brutal one because it's illuminating where you have allowed a partnership, a marriage, an external expectation, a contractual agreement to kind of regulate who you are, what you do, let's say, in your free time, and so on. So you start questioning what's good in maintaining an unhealthy relationship, a relationship structure, which actually kind of suffocates me and doesn't support who I am. Maybe, even we should be reading actually Saturn into the picture. And the reason why I'm bringing up the work environment for you, because this full moon is being squared by Saturn, as well as um, being disposed by Saturn as well. But I don't want to overwhelm you with a lot of information. And by the way, I'm going to be talking about this tomorrow on the full moon report that I'm making for my members. So if you're curious, please join the membership, and then I see you every 2 weeks for a good 3 hours as well. So, but there is that internal tension there. It's a super deep internal tension. It is happening at the most hidden part of your chart. And it feels like the reason why you don't have a courage is because the past is somehow influencing you. Something in your subconscious telling you that this is not the way how we treat, for example, a boss. Maybe because somehow in your family lineage, it wasn't kind of like you were not allowed to talk back. And that's why you are kind of like choking up on your words with that Mercury retrograde. Cancer is all about protecting that soft interior. And then often we just retreat back into our shell. And I think that Mars and Uranus conjunction tries to figure out why you are doing such thing. You have to have a sudden realization that this is because my father always told me to shut up. And I don't know, I cannot eat at the table. Or, you know, I remember that my parents were not allowed to touch food until my grandfather finished food. Did that happen, guys, in your family? dynamics as well, or the kids were always eating at a separate table and then the parents and the adults were eating at the main table. Because I remember having this conversation with my parents and aunts and aunties and uncles and so forth, and they asked me, where do you sit at the table with your grandma? And I was like, at the main table. Oh, we used to sit at the small table. We were not allowed to touch food. And I was like, oh, really? Like it never happened to me. So obviously the world has changed, but the older generation might have experienced such thing. So I'm curious to hear whether it had happened to you as well or not. And this is kind of like the memory loop that potentially a Cancer rising sign can go down on, you know. So there is a pressure cooker with this full moon, as well as Aries at the top of your chart. And you feel that urge to kind of blow the whistle here. And you might be making a choice kind of like at a lightning speed. The question is, are we going to regret that later on or not? Someone says, in India, it's very different. My parents would actually feed me with their own hands. We were in the main table together. Yeah, I don't know why it happened in my family. I mean, I've heard some stories from other families as well. I'm talking about people who are in their 50s, 60s. So, like I said, it never happened to me, but it happened to my parents, to my uncles, and aunties as well. So that's why I'm asking, because this could be quite a traumatic experience, I think, for someone, because you are not included. And that's exactly what Aries talks to you about. Aries wasn't also included in the party, right? And that's why this person has become rebellious. Okay, so we are going to move forward. And then let's talk about Leo rising sign. So, Leo, this is happening. I mean, Mercury is going retrograde in your 12th house. And not an easy house, to be frank. In a way, kind of like I don't envy you, because Mercury, I tend to find it super difficult often in the 12th house, natally as well. Why? Because we cannot see things clearly. We are hearing words that are not even being said, or we are seeing things that haven't even happened. Sometimes our imagination can play tricks with us. What Mercury is super good for is that you can become a seer with that. And then when you work on that talent of seeing things, then actually you can become extremely talented at it. But I think it's about mastery as well. Now, of course, the full moon is happening in your 6th house, and then the Uranus Mars conjunction is happening in your 11th house. So, with Mercury retrograding in your 12th house, kind of like your mind is plunging into the deep ocean of the past. It's a mental loops of regret, it's guilt, it's thinking back what happened with my parents, how they have treated me. There is an inner monologue happening there, tracking past mistakes, thinking, I don't know, I should have protected my energy, for example. It's like, a Leo friend of mine has just gone on holiday and Mercury retrograde is coming up. And, she has got kids, 4 kids, and she's super, I mean, the eldest kid is already 20, 21 soon. So she's taking care of the little ones. But she's so anxious. And I was like, what's the point in going away and having a bit of a rest, 12th house, if you are not going to be able to switch off your mind? Now, 12th house can represent a bit of a retreat, right? A bit of a getaway. And what it really tells you is that you can get worried, like you can worry so much that you actually can get sick. You are unable to switch off. You are kind of like checking up on your phones all the time if something happened, and so forth. So this is why we have got Hygeia there, who says you have to be preventing yourself from going down on that way of thinking. It is telling you that if you keep thinking the worst, then you are actually going to be attracting that. Obviously, Hygeia is the archetype of sanitization, purification. So we have to be purifying the mind here. We have to be even allowing ourselves as well as others to kind of make mistakes. And you see, Mercury is making a conjunction to Jupiter. Jupiter rules the kids in this chart, right? The ruler of the fifth house. So no wonder why my friend, she texted me this morning as well that they are on the way because they are having this like anniversary, 15 year of marriage anniversary. And so they went away for a week or so. And oh my days, I'm so worried already, and so on. And I completely understand, but this is about switching off your brain, not allowing the past to kind of catch up to you, especially if you feel like it's been haunting you or it's kind of causing you mental problems. Okay, now of course Aphrodite kind of like could talk to you about trying to think of the nice things, as well as you are trying to kind of reconnect secretly with someone you kind of used to love, or you just think about them and then you can feel guilty. I don't know, I'm on holiday with my husband. Why am I thinking of my first lover? So old memories could be coming back to you, let's say at that place, which is triggering your mind to think of the past. And it doesn't mean that you are kind of like cheating on someone, right? So, but also it could indicate a mental awakening for you. You might be ready to track your hidden anxieties, and you start seeing the pattern. Jupiter is not necessarily pattern recognition, but it is about synthesizing all the information that we've got. So I start seeing the bigger picture. It's like placing each puzzles into the frame, and then all of a sudden I start seeing something there. And it's something to do with addictions, the past, karma, even family matters as well, of course, with Cancer. But the 12th house is like a really long family lineage type of things. Now, at the same time, we do have got the 6th house. So like I said, you can worry yourself to get sick. And this is where the full moon comes into the picture, which says when we are exposed to some type of mental instability, then the physical body becomes exposed as well. So watch out for such things as food poisoning, for example. But also that moon is telling you that there is a deep emotional exhaustion happening, and that is being opposed by your daily life. Like, I have to clean, I have to, pick up the dirty socks, any type of hidden domestic issues. And that is not allowing me to be able to rest, to process something. With Mercury, we process a piece of information. So you can bury yourself, for example, into your obligations and work, not having to deal with the past. Is that the solution really? Or are we going to have to be able to find a balance here? So, but also it could be just work regulation, work routines, the rules at workplace, right? And someone might be telling you just show up, do your job, and then go home and rest. You are not here to complain. You are here to fulfill your duties. You are here to kind of stick to a protocol. So why are you talking to me about your personal issues? I don't necessarily care about that. So how does that make us feel, right? It makes us feel less human in a way. So this Capricorn full moon is illuminating where you have overregulated your body, your schedule, where you have treated yourself like a machine at the expense of your mental sanity, of your emotional sanity. What's good in maintaining I don't know, a good workplace, for example, a good routine, without an inner psychological, well put together psychological frame of mind, right? So we still go home and then we are still going to be worried, we are still going to be kind of like crying and so on. So it's somehow you are having to allow yourself to, or your soul to kind of breathe a little bit. Allow yourself to rest, allow yourself to have fun. Now, Uranus and Mars conjunction is happening in your 11th house, while Aries is in your 9th house. Often Leo is a very supportive sign, actually. And yes, this is also an egotistical sign, but often it's super generous. It's one of the most generous signs of all. And it feels like to me with Uranus and Mars that potentially you have been too generous and you might want to stop kind of like doing that. Obviously, a Leo rising sign is often generous because it is expecting to get kind of like adored for it. So you end up making a ton of cake, for example, to your classmates or to your children's teachers and so on. Because we want, and not because we want to pay them off to get better grades, but we want to get some appreciations. We want to be noticed. So the Uranus and Mars conjunction might be asking you to look at if you are receiving enough appreciations from others. Am I surrounded by people who align with my values? Okay. And Aries in your 9th house is kind of like a point of view that triggers me. A point of view, something is being said and done, an opinion, which I might not be able to kind of associate myself with. And I decide that this is something that I don't want to talk about. I don't wish to tolerate anymore. This is an opinion that I want to be sharing with others. And Mercury retrograde is, of course, kind of like thinking it through whether I should do that or not. But I've got a shocking piece of information to kind of share with the world. And maybe this is a friend of ours with Uranus and Mars conjunction. I've got a shocking announcement to make that I don't know, I'm going to leave my job behind, for example, and I'm going to start something completely new. And I don't know, I'm going to become a social media influencer. And everyone is like, wow, where did that come from? Are you going through your midlife crisis or stuff like that? So people can be telling you things like that. So is that Mercury retrograde going to listen to it, or are you going to be able to actually get motivated and plan things out? Because this Mercury retrograde allows you to plan these things. But also this might be about you wanting to drag out certain type of hidden truth as well. So you can get into a bit of an investigative mode with this. Somehow this is like I'm done silently carrying the weight of this dynamic and behind the scenes, and I want to break out of it. And that's where there could be a bit of an argument with this. And I'm breaking away from the expectations of others, and I'm going to be living a more authentic version of myself. So that would be the Leo message. Oh, okay, I'm not too sure what I'm doing here. So why did I hide that message? Now it's good. Generous to get adored makes so much sense. Past things, domestic back in picture. Yes, huge family issues going on and finances. I wonder if it can also cause nightmares. Yes, retrograde planets in the 12th house often bring recurring dreams. Okay, reoccurring dreams. So maybe you haven't had a dream of your, let's say, ex-partner for a long time, and all of a sudden they come back into your memory, right? So yeah, that's absolutely a good point. I'm a Leo Sun 6th house. Should I also listen to Leo rising sign? If I'm a Leo Sun 6th house, should I also listen to Leo rising sign? If you wish so, absolutely. But you have to be counting, from Leo to Cancer. So if you're a Leo Sun, this happens in your 12th house, right? But basically, then you are putting the sun onto the rising sign. And yeah, so therefore you are listening to the 11th house. Okay. Let's move on to Virgo rising sign. Virgo rising sign, this is happening in your 11th house, full moon in the 5th house, Uranus Mars conjunction in your 10th house. So you are in the center of this configuration because you are ruled by Mercury. And Mercury stations retrograde in your 11th house, the house of long-term goals, hopes, wishes, the death of a parent. So it feels like that your entire orientation is kind of like changing a little bit. Maybe you are reviewing your alliances, you are reviewing the way you manage your social media channels. Maybe you are going to deactivate a Facebook account of yours and so forth. But also, maybe you are ready to kind of look at who you surround yourself with. And maybe it's like, you know what, I should have never met this person. You can overgo, like you can kind of go down on a memory lane, replaying old conversations with a friend of yours, and or the way you got betrayed, of course, and thinking, why did I give my energy to this person? Why did I give this energy to these groups, for example? I should have spoken up. Why did I allow them to keep me quiet somehow? But asteroid Hygeia is there as well, the goddess of purification and kind of like clinical health. And Hygeia says that we need to be able to kind of perform a psychological surgery on our social circle, on the way how we are networking. And if there is toxicity happening in the group of people you are part of, then how I'm going to be, you know, like, let's say you go to a party, because the 11th house represents social events, and you go to this party and maybe with five girlfriends of yours, or, you know, boys, and then everyone is just talking about how shitty their marriage is, for example. So the question is, did we come here to have a good time, or did we come here to talk about the past? So this Mercury starts thinking about, am I being surrounded by very pessimistic, like toxic people? And it kind of feels like, yes, I am. So how I'm going to be rebuilding these connections with others? It also can indicate that a friend of yours from the past is going to try to reach out to you, or you are trying to reach out to them, because we are trying to smooth things over a little bit. We realize that we have done something bad and we should apologize for it, because Aphrodite there as well, which is about smoothing things over. There is Aurora there, which represents the dawn, the fresh beginnings. So someone from your past, retrograde, comes back into your life to smooth things over, Aphrodite, to have a fresh start. So this could be, for example, where the inner demon, Aries, in your eighth house says, can I trust this person? Is it a smart idea to allow this person back into my life? Are they going to take advantage of me? Are they going to, I don't know, get money out of my pocket again? Or is it going to be like last time? I don't know, we go to a party and then I'm going to pay for their drinks, or whatever it is. So you are unsure whether I should allow this person. And then this Mercury retrograde teaches you that you have to listen to your gut feelings. It's not just about what they say and what they do, but what is your gut feeling telling you right now? But also, this might be about you have been thinking about starting a new channel, for example, building up a new community. Then Mercury says we're going to have to start working on the logistics of that. Not necessarily launching it immediately, but just like, let's put the plan together. Let's open that Facebook channel, for example. Let's write up certain type of materials. Let's overgo the materials that we have already prepared, just to kind of make sure that it's up to scratch. Now, we do have got the full moon happening in your fifth house, which is your creative endeavors, which is your romantic life, your children, but also the way you express yourself. So there is a harsh reality happening here between what makes you truly happy and that expectation of a group of people. So I can imagine confrontation here, for example, that one wants to go to an expensive restaurant and I want to go to, the buffet, for example, at a Chinese buffet for, I don't know, $20, while the other one wants to go to a Gordon Ramsay restaurant. And there is no understanding here that not everyone has got the same amount of money. And that would be Aries in the eighth house. Or, it's kind of like when a group of people is telling you that, like, that's not how we do things here. And you need to tone down your personal expression, kind of like just for the sake of the collective, for the sake of the group. And what really it kind of tells you about is that, do I want to be a part of a group where I cannot be the true version of myself? Because if your answer is no, I cannot be, then this is about cutting ties with people as well. So this Capricorn full moon is illuminating exactly where you have overregulated your own joy, your unique talent, your romantic life to kind of appease a crowd, to be able to fit in. Imagine that you have got a boyfriend and you don't get along, you don't like his boys, his friends, his workmates, maybe with Uranus and Mars conjunction. Maybe they come around, they leave a mess, and you just do your duties, right? But this Mercury retrograde is like, I don't even like them. I don't want to be part of this group. I don't want them to be here. So Uranus and Mars kind of can cause a bit of an argument over that. It feels like that your own creative soul is being suffocated just to have a seat at the table. It's like when your friends are not supporting you and then they tell you to do the opposite. So you are bending your own happiness. In what ways? You're going to have to start asking yourself that question. And of course, with Mars and Uranus conjunction in your 10th house, which is about your public reputation, it's of course work-related matters as well. So, I'm just wondering that you have always been super reliable. Let's say you have always shown up to your friends. You have always, tried to keep their interest at first and so forth. And then now there is this unpredictable type of energy happening at work. And maybe you are requesting their help and they don't show up for you. And you start thinking again, why am I doing this? So this is somehow just a couple of examples, but with Aries in the eighth house, it could indicate some type of financial injustice as well, because the 11th house represents pay rise, the 10th house represents work. So imagine that, I don't know, you feel like you are the only one who doesn't get pay rise at work and everyone else did. So why am I kind of like getting discriminated here? And then Mercury is like, am I going to speak up about it or am I going to retreat into my own shell and I'm going to be just accepting? But somehow this retrograde is teaching you that I'm done silently playing the helper, while my own like creative efforts are not being recognized. And Virgo, this is probably one of your biggest life lessons. You are not only here to be a fixer. You are not only here to kind of become a servant. You are able to do a lot more than that. So that's Virgo rising sign. Let me see what you guys are saying. So I can see your messages. Hi from Lubbock, Texas. I'm 0 Pisces Sun. Okay, 29 Cancer Uranus, 0 Scorpio Neptune, Leo Jupiter return. I'm 70. Nice to have you here. That's tropicals. Yes, we are doing tropical astrology. Sleep, yeah. Okay. My niece, I'm Leo. Yeah, my Pisces Virgo son's been through the ringer this past 10 months. My niece is a Virgo rising, and I can sense this in her, and my mom as well with Virgo rising sign. Yes. Okay, so guys, if you don't mind, we are going to be taking just 1 minute break because I need to hit the loo, but I'll be back in 1 minute. Don't go anywhere because we are going to be coming up with 6 more signs. I'm back. So let's change it to Libra rising sign. Here you go. Libra rising sign. The Mercury retrograde is going through your 10th house, the house of reputation, career choices. And it feels like that you have to be navigating a strategy, potentially a business strategy, into a better direction. So we're going to have to be able to sit down and we're going to have to be kind of like rewriting the projects that we have been working on a little bit to better applying it to your, let's say, audience or to people or clients, because the moon represents people. Your moon, the full moon, is happening in your 4th house. So, of course, that would be talking to us about spending a couple of quiet days to kind of switching off the phone and really looking at those plans. But also this Mercury kind of tell me that potentially you have been swallowing up a certain type of words that you are meant to be actually, like maybe it's a frustration. You are swallowing your truth just to kind of stay organized or polite or a people pleaser and so forth. Maybe you want to be having kind of a big conversation with your boss or at work, but because you want to be fitting in a way. And the danger here is that it could immediately register in your physical body, because there is a full moon here as well. And the moon can represent our physical body. And therefore, it can show up, for example, as nervous tension, digestive issues, diarrhea, or we simply feel exhausted by the work that we do. So you might start thinking about, you know what, the previous job was better, maybe because it allowed me to spend more time with my family members and so forth. So there is a need here for you to acknowledge the heavy realities of your create like your creative desires, having to look at um, whether this work, for example, gives you the work and life balance that you need. Somehow it also tells me that because this is the highest peak of your chart, so you might, the 10th house, so you might feel like that you have reached certain type of heights and I have hit a wall, and where do I go from here? So potentially there might be nothing wrong with the work you have done, but I don't know, you know what? I have been the employee of the month 3 times a year. They are never going to promote me, or I'm the highest paid, I don't know, attorney ever, and it's still not kind of giving me the satisfaction. Maybe because this full moon is telling you that I don't want to be working in the corporate world anymore. Let's say I want to be working from home. So how am I going to be making that choice? It could be also a professional regret. I should have never started this job. I should have said yes to that job, and so forth. This could be that you are overgoing kind of like old conversations with your bosses and thinking, I don't know, why did I accept that role? I should have demanded a better salary. I should have demanded a better title. I should have told them how frustrated I am by the way someone else treated me, because there is Aries in the 7th house, which is actually a contractual agreement, for example. But why am I building a legacy that is emotionally not fulfilling for me? So you can be going down all of that. And I usually say, whenever I have a career consultation, for example, with people, and I don't ask them immediately what type of job they do, especially if they want me to recommend something. The reason being is because I'm giving them a description and then they are telling me that this is the type of job exactly I am doing. So is it something that I'm meant to be doing? No. But what I usually say is that you did that job. Let's say if you have been a doctor, but you want to be making changes in your life, you have been a doctor for a reason. And maybe you have learned certain skills there that you need to be able to apply in your next job as well. So there's no point in regretting doing certain type of jobs. I have worked 20 years in a McDonald's. Did I ever tell you guys? Have I ever regretted working for McDonald's? No, because I learned rules there. I learned really valuable lessons that I actually apply in my own business. I was a business manager of restaurants and I was a HR consultant later on. So, did I learn things that I am applying in my real life? Absolutely. So, we are doing these type of jobs for a reason. Now Hygeia is right there with Mercury as well as Aphrodite and Aurora. And I think Hygeia says to you that we have to be maybe simplifying a business plan. Maybe we have overcomplicated something because Jupiter is there too, right? And Jupiter is the planet of overcomplications. We have to be doing a bit of a professional, like, surgery on our professional life a little bit. Maybe we are in a toxic work environment. Maybe we are part of kind of like a machine. And I don't wish to be part of that machine anymore, this corporate structure, or the habits that I have to be performing is it doesn't align with my principles. That's going to be Mars and Uranus conjunction in the 9th house. My belief system have changed. So all of these are somehow affecting your physical health, your peace of mind, Uranus and Mars conjunction. So it feels like that I want to be breaking out of it. Now, of course, Libra is naturally super good at using their charm to smooth things over. But now we've got Aphrodite conjuncting Mercury as well. So it looks like that you are trying to smooth over, let's say, a legal issue at work or a bit of a debate and so forth. But really, what Mercury says to you here is that nicety sometimes leads us to a good place and sometimes it doesn't. So that inner demon is telling you that you are still or Aries is still telling you that you are still somehow getting attacked here, and maybe I have to be changing my strategy. Maybe it's kind of like I should have accepted that leadership role. Why did I not accept it, you know? Now we've got the full moon here, and this full moon is really about reality. It's a clash between my private duties as well as my private sanctuary. So it feels like that while you are trying to manage a business, for example, you have got family demands going on as well. And I don't know which way to go. I don't know which one to choose. I have to be emotionally present at home and I have to show up at work as well. So, but somehow this full moon is going to show you where you allowed traditional family kind of obligations, ancestral guilt, rigid rules of how a household should run, and so forth, kind of like overregulate your time. And this Mercury has to see that this is a trap that I got stuck in, and I have to somehow break out of that. You know, what's the point in me building a super good career if my emotional environment feels cold, rigid, and I kind of like I don't like going back home, you know? Maybe it's because you are alone, you know, you've got a very heavy seventh house and you don't have anyone to share the burden with, and then you can start thinking about those type of things as well. It feels like there is kind of like an inner dialogue and negotiations to be made to go after your true calling. And Uranus and Mars is kind of like a flashlight. It is trying to give you ideas about what path you need to be on. The Uranus Mars conjunction is motivating you to study something new, pick up new skills. But if you are in a relationship, Aries could be telling you, don't be silly, this is a well paid job. You have reached such heights. So why would you leave right now when you are at the top of your career, for example? So, and Libra rising sign, you are famous for compromising and accommodating other people's needs just to kind of keep the peace. But you have to be thinking it through. How long am I going to be able to sustain doing that? And it really feels like that you are feeling this itch to rewrite your scripts, to rewrite, to walk away from these dogmatic matters, these rigid contractual agreements, these outdated perspective on life, and you want to be opening up to new horizons. So that's how it feels like to me, Cancer rising sign. Do let me know in the chat box below how you might feel about that, by the way, because I'm very curious to hear. Many job changes. His heart is for creating songs and writing. Thank you for Mississippi. Hi, Mississippi. Excited for Libra as it's my rising. Hi, Libra rising sign. My Cancer sister and her Libra wife having relationship trouble. Yes, I mean, Libra rising signs can be having relationship troubles nowadays with a very heavy seventh house, especially the last 4 months and the upcoming 10 month ahead. And then after it's kind of starting to slow down. Imagine even for a Libra rising sign where work gets in the way of a happy relationship. Now that could be also a storyline here. And we don't know how to separate our private life from our career path. And it's all landing in the seventh house, the house of career department. In the house of relationship department. Okay. All right, so what is happening? Let's move on to Scorpio rising sign. So, Scorpio, this is happening in your ninth house with Mercury retrograde. Mars and Uranus conjunction is in your eighth house, and the full moon is happening in your third house. So, like I described this yesterday as well, it kind of feels like this period of time is a bit of an astrological storm, really. And that is going to peak on the 29th of June onwards, which is taking place in the house of truth, belief, as well as, yeah, of course, relocation and all those type of things. But it really feels like that there is a worldview here, and there is the rigid reality. And you need to come to terms that the fantasies, for example, or the belief systems, or these views, or the lack of faith is really forming your own reality. Now the ninth house talks to you about publishing, contracts as well, education. you know we have got a lot of asteroids here as well, right? Aurora, Hygeia, Aphrodite, and then Jupiter, and then the Sun. So there's quite a heavy energy going on in your ninth house. So surely there is a need here to look at your worldview. You have to be looking at your kind of like your relationships with your mind. Do I feed that mind in the proper way? Maybe your mind is kind of like launching into this audit of your truth, and then whether I'm ready to share my truth with the world, I'm ready to share my truth with others as well. There's an inner monologue going on there, like, why did I sign up for this course? Why did I sign up for this obligation? Did I compromise my ethics for, let's say, safety? Why am I still living in this old fantasy or old philosophy that doesn't fit my reality anymore, because things are changing around me? Why do I allow people to kind of push their own narratives onto me? Because it's affecting my mental health, hygiene. So, there is a lot of overthinking happening right now in your chart. And IGS says, oh, I need to come around with a surgical intervention. I need to stop that. I need to switch off that brain, because we cannot just think about that all the time. We cannot just, I don't know, read up on legal arrangements or, psychological matters and so forth. So this is about you becoming aware of some toxic intellectual environments or hypocritical mentors, or those people who are very knowledgeable but hypocrites at the same time. Or you are seeing that certain type of legal contracts are super draining, and that is somehow making you sick. Where does that sickness come from? The heavy sixth house that you are experiencing right now. Saturn and Aries, actually, more about that. There is also a path that you are romanticizing here, with Aphrodite being around Mercury as well. And there is Aurora there, which says a new path. So you are romanticizing a new path here. It feels like you don't have a concrete plan yet, but you have got an idea which way to go. And I think this Mercury retrograde wants you to sit down and says to you that without concrete plan, it's going to fall apart. This is also backed up with the full moon as well. The full moon is teaching you, sit down, collect the data, let's write up a plan, let's get super committed, let's be very real about what we are fantasizing about. Like, can I make a service out of that, right? But also maybe the question here is, what type of mental blocks you are meant to be exposing right now and rewriting? Or you are fantasizing about something, but you have got a rigid schedule. And I don't know, you have to pick up the kids, you have to go to work, you have to get the car washed and all these type of stuff. And so I don't have time to, go for something like a new vision, ninth house. And Mercury retrograde says, you have to slow down. You have to somehow fit this into your own schedule. Okay, you have to come up with a plan and you have to launch that plan. Or you are ready to launch a plan, but you are kind of like running into these bureaucratic kind of rules, like a lot of paperwork, for example. Like, imagine that you want to be signing up for a course and you have to be doing an evaluation test, and you have to do this and you have to do that. And, maybe it's a student loan, Mars Uranus conjunction in your eighth house. And then why is it so complicated? That's not what I imagined. I've heard this actually so many times So there is a negative mindset, there is a narrative here that needs to be rewritten. A Capricorn full moon is actually illuminating somehow where you have been small-minded, where you have potentially allowed others to cause you anxiety, why you have suppressed your higher vision. What's the point in having a great, like a grand strategy if you don't know how to kind of communicate about it? So that full moon is telling you that you might need to be going back to the basics in a way again. It's the daily logistics that we have to be kind of like reworking. And that Uranus and Mars are very financially, aware. So this is about how I can make more money, how I can have more loyalty as well. It could bring some unpredictable type of energies, for example, in your relationship. Maybe it's a shocking piece of information from your partner that they want to quit their job while you are coming up with your grand vision, and so on. So it's a trigger of a fear that you are not being listened to, you are not allowed to speak about your feelings and emotions and your plans. So you start kind of like maybe abandoning that vision. Because Mercury was approaching Jupiter, so we have a vision here, but the Mercury decides to go backwards. So it's not meeting up Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, right? So that's kind of like the conclusion for you there. I think it's about knowing that you cannot swallow your truth. You shouldn't be tolerating hypocrisy. You shouldn't be maintaining a false sense of security. So that's my message for you, Scorpio. Let's move on to Sagittarius rising. Sagittarius rising, this is happening in your 8th house, the house of taxes, insurance, psychological baggages and complexes, as well as inheritance related matters. So, and this is also connected to karma as well, and really can talk to you about the past. So you can have regrets about money. You can have regrets about signing up for a mortgage, for example. Like, why did I sign that financial agreement? Why did I let anyone else control my assets, for example? Or why did I not kind of like, why did I not protect my emotional boundaries? Why did I let my emotional boundaries get entirely compromised for safety? The 8th house is something to do with sharing, and the 2nd house is the ability to receive, the ability to give. So somehow it exposes that what I receive and what I give is out of balance. So maybe it's about, I'm not feeling supported somehow. It's about shared dependencies. Why is this person so dependent on me? Why am I so dependent on this person? Why am I not able to let this person go, for example? Is it because we have got shared arrangements, shared finances, and I don't want to give up on that? So Mercury is somehow asking us to kind of come up with a plan here. And yes, maybe with Aphrodite, we are thinking about how good it used to be. Like, oh, we used to earn such a great amount of money. This relationship was way better. I could rely on this person. But Mercury retrograde is somehow teaching you that you have to be focusing on the present. Is it still good? Is it still working? How is manipulation showing up in your life? How are you manipulated by money, power struggles, something that is energetically draining you, maybe even literally making you sick too? So it's also about looking at your financial anxieties. I think it does bring a mental awakening. Maybe you are ready to actually make a huge transition because Mercury rules your career department. So I can imagine that you are thinking about going for a better job, a transition and so forth. But you have got those financial anxieties, and then you are hesitating, you are doubting your even your skills. But somehow this Mercury retrograde is going to be about psychological freedom. And I mean, imagine that with Uranus and Mars conjunction, you've got a partner who is kind of like telling you that, yeah, honey, I bring the money home, so you have to shut up. And Mercury in Cancer can be silenced easily. And then I start thinking about, why did I hand the power over to this person to start with? So somehow there is these psychological boundaries that we have to be able to kind of come up with. Now, the full moon is illuminating your second house, which is your self-worth, but also your cash flow as well as your possessions. So you really seem to be looking at, like, in a harsh way, how much money I've got, what do I own, what have I achieved so far, how much money I've got in the bank account, in my saving account, and so forth. Or simply you want to go for a mortgage, for example, with your eighth house, and then you realize that, oh my days, I don't make enough money, for example, or my credit scores are not that great, or there are really rigid bank rules, or even restrictions right now in the banks, considering the current climate. So, or you have inherited money, but due to bureaucratic reasons, I'm not getting it, and I'm in need of that. So somehow this full moon is illuminating exactly where you have let external financial systems or corporate obligations or traditional standards, over-regulate your cash flow. And it becomes a trap when it comes to your own self-worth, really. You know, what it's like, you can even come up with, like, what's the point in being a good girl if it doesn't get financially rewarded? Because the eighth house rules the criminals. Imagine that you work at a company and only those people are getting rewarded who are always late or steal money, or, I don't know, end up with a huge piece of ham in their bags. And I have never done that in my life. Because Sagittarius is like, a rising sign is about moral codes. It's about ethics. Usually you don't necessarily catch, I mean, you can catch actually Sagittarius either as they are big liars, or they are very much down to their moral codes. So you have to be renegotiating some financial terms here. That's how it feels like it. And this might be happening in your relationship department or over a contractual agreement because of the Uranus and Mars conjunction, which is happening in your business partnership part of your chart, or romantic partnership, or agreements as well, or, yeah, of course, marriage too. And Aries sits in your fifth house, which is your romantic life. So I'm also wondering if we have to be kind of like reworking the way we have fun in our relationship, the way kind of like we spend quality time together, or we have to be thinking about how to induce a bit more romanticism or chemistry back into the relationship so that it can go through this transition. Or with the eighth house and second house, it can lead to a divorce. So that's my message for you, Sagittarius rising sign today. Yeah, I always feel my corporate life has taught me what professional structure I would need for my future coaching business. I highly agree with such things. I worked for New York State 21 years, then began working with the elderly. Oh, for sure, work and family are competing a lot. As home health aide, you can make your own schedule mostly because demand is huge. Last 4 months have been dramatically bad for relationship. I'm guessing that's a Libra rising sign then. Everyone have a good day. Thank you. And you too. Let's move on to Capricorn rising sign. And then if you guys have got some questions, then you can stick around at the end. I'm gonna have a couple of minutes to answer questions. But Capricorn rising sign, this is taking place in your seventh house. So your relationship, as well as your personal autonomy, is going to be coming up for a review. You are meant to be looking at contractual agreements. You have to be looking at whether the relationships are somehow based on equality, or we're going to have to be rewriting the rules here. There is quite a strong energy going on in Cancer right now, and which is really talking to you about just auditing your closest relationships. Like, do we benefit from each other? Is there a point in carrying on? There could be a lot of mental loops where, yeah, maybe an ex of yours is coming back into your life, or you start thinking about your ex partner, or you're replaying kind of like old arguments, reviewing relationship agreements. And maybe you are saying with the full moon in the first house is that, why did I compromise my autonomy for this deal? I should have spoken up about the terms of this partnership, because it feels like the partnership might have become kind of like one-sided a little bit. And with Mercury and Hygeia conjunction, Hygeia is the archetype of sanitization and prevention and purification. So it somehow reminds that we have to be revisiting the foundations of the relationship. We have to be very aware of these toxic dynamics, codependencies, or these agreements that are actually draining your vitality, your physical body. And the physical body is, of course, going to be the full moon in your first house. And maybe at first you are going to try to smooth things over, with Aphrodite being around Mercury as well. But then we have got this mental awakening that nice words might not be helping anymore. So we're gonna have to apply a bit of a more of a raw words, really. It really feels like that you are starting this new era, a more authentic and maybe a more healthy or more fair connections. And I cannot emphasize enough that the seventh house is not only about romantic, relationships. Now, there is the full moon getting illuminated as well. And this is about self-realization. It is telling you that it's you who can make changes in your life. You cannot depend on your partner. It's you who has to prioritize your personal freedom. It's you who has to step into that, your own authority. Maybe a partner who shows up like a legal associate, a business partner, a romantic partner, and so forth, and they are trying to reinforce something in your life, like a rigid standard. This is, oh, you didn't do it well, or this is how you should do things, or you have to be fulfilling your duty first. And is that true, or I have to be thinking about that? Because the full moon is really telling us that you have to be attending your own needs first. We have to find the balance of how much I care for others and how much I care for myself. So the full moon is showing you where you have overregulated yourself, where you treated your own body and identity like a machine to kind of keep the peace in that seventh house. And it feels like that you are being suffocated by others because you don't show up as the authentic self of yours. You are bending who you are to be able to accommodate others. So, and this might be connected to work, because you have got Mars and Uranus conjunction happening in your sixth house, which is your daily grind. And that's quite, let's say, it's a volatile work environment. For example, there are a lot of unpredictable things happening there, or we have got, unhealthy relationship patterns, health symptoms. So we are realizing that the routine, the way we care for ourselves, is going to kind of cause a breakout in my body. Somehow my body is getting triggered by the demands of others, and maybe I cannot do that anymore. Hopefully this is giving you that awakening. And it might be happening at home, of course, because Aries is in your fourth house, and it feels like that you're becoming more rebellious at home, you know. So it's like you are breaking your own back to keep everyone happy around you. And Aries says, I'm done breaking my back. You know, you can also chip in because it is costing my health. It is costing, you know, my time, my effort. So that would be the message for you, Capricorn rising sign. So let's move on to Aquarius. Here you go. Aquarius, this is happening in your sixth house, which is the house of health. So, and then we have got the Capricorn moon, a full moon happening in your 12th house. So, what it feels like is that you have to be really thinking about how you have been kind of like showing up for yourself. This is definitely self care. This is definitely about what's the mental health look like? How do I allow my environment to kind of shape my mental sanity? So for you, Aquarius, this is somehow you are getting into that mental loop of routines and even like why did I leave, for example, this workplace? Like I should have stayed here because I don't know, it paid the bills. Why did I having that argument, for example, with a coworker? So we can overgo, you know, we can be overthinking past job choices as well. Like why did I take on this extra labor? Why am I breaking my back again for this type of paycheck or schedule? Because it somehow doesn't even let me sleep, for example, and that's the full moon in the 10th house. This is about maybe I'm going to have to decide, or I'm going to have to be more aware of toxic work environments. I'm going to have to start thinking about ways of removing it. This is when, you know, during this transit, your body refuses to digest further kind of toxic events. Anything that is unbalanced, kind of like routine and so on. And that's when the body can go on strike. So Mercury comes here and says that we have to be getting smarter with that, you know. And don't think with Aphrodite that if I sleep for a couple of hours, then I'm going to be recharged. It really feels like that you need a bit of a getaway. Why? Because Uranus and Mars conjunction is in your 10th house. It's like maybe you have to be scheduling a bit of a holiday. And I'm not going to be taking my work laptop with me. Let me restore my mental health, you know. Let me be able to switch off. Let me not bring the daily drama into that holiday place as well. You know, I've got a great Aquarius friend of mine, and whenever she travels, somehow the ex-boyfriend figures out, and then the drama just starts, and then she cannot just switch off from that. Now, that's the fifth house element there, right? The drama, the workplace drama, and then the colleagues are calling you. Just imagine what the boss said. Everyone is going to get dismissed. So you are kind of like biting off your nails. So you have to be able to prevent yourself from that. That's what Hygiea manages there, or not manages, but tells you there. Okay. Yes, of course, you can be worried about losing your job. The full moon in the 12th house represents certain type of losses, while the sixth house is the daily grind, the work environment. So how stable is my workplace? Am I going to be needed in 1 year time? And so forth. So maybe the reason why you have to be looking at, you know, new ways of earning money is because Jupiter being in your sixth house as well. And you know, the reality here is with the full moon in your 12th house, the house of subconscious and isolation and mental health. So it also can indicate, and then I'm wondering with Aries in your third house that you're finally going to be speaking up about some traumatic feelings or how you have been hurt. But what it really feels like with your 12th house activations is that it is your mental health is kind of like hitting a wall. And it's like when I feel desperate to retreat, to go into that deep hibernation, or I need a long sleep. Sixth house says fulfill your duties, stick to the protocol, follow the kind of like we have to be producing even more. But this full moon is telling you that you are potentially overworked. So, and then the full moon says, please don't ignore my subconscious mind. Don't ignore this alarm that I'm kind of like giving you. You have to be taking care of the inner child as well. And Uranus Mars definitely says that it's time to become flirtatious. It's time to, like, why do I want to be alone? Why am I not signing up for a relationship, for example, if you are single? Why am I not allowing myself to have fun? Why am I not being more creative when it comes to work? Why am I only doing the bare minimum in a way when there is an abundance out there in a way, and then I just have to reach out, but I have to be super creative about it. I just have to be maybe do more videos or something like that. So that Mars and Uranus conjunction is quite competitive. So there's a lot of competition happening in your work arena, but it can be happening in your physical body as well. It's like with the fifth house is your heart, your spine. For example, it could be actually the fifth house is like your lungs as well. Now, Gemini definitely represents the lungs. So, maybe this is somehow showing up as you have got certain type of bad habits which you truly enjoy, but maybe we have to cut back on that. Okay? So that's the message for you, Aquarius. And then let's do Pisces rising sign. Oh, we went a little bit ahead too much. Okay, Pisces rising sign. Poor Pisces, we are always the last one, but what can we do? This is happening in your fifth house. And it feels like that you have to be looking at your own romantic endeavors. You have to be looking at your creative projects. You have to be looking at why am I, for example, from a romantic point of view, why am I signing up all because Mercury rules your seventh house, the house of relationship? Like, why am I getting into always these type of relationships? Why do I attract these people? Why am I having the tendency to romanticize a partner, kind of falling for what they have got to say when my gut feeling is telling me that this is actually not right? So, but also this is telling you to review how you spend your creative energy, how much emotional energy you put into let's say, a romantic partnerships, and then how much I get back in return. Because Aries is squaring it from the second house, which is about giving. Where is the receiving part of things? So, but also, do I allow myself to have joy and fun in my life, or am I doing it too much? And I need to be cutting back on that a little bit. With Aphrodite being there, if you are single, Pisces, this is potentially about an ex of yours is coming back into your life, or you are falling in love head over heels with someone, and Aurora represents starting over. So maybe the biggest chances for the 12 signs for someone to come back into your life is definitely Pisces. Am I going to let them come back into my life, or are they here just to kind of damage my self-worth again? Aries is kind of talking that language in your second house. The full moon is actually happening in your 11th house. So imagine that a friend of yours is kind of like warning you against that. Or the fifth house is creative endeavors. You are so creative. You are rewriting your creative endeavors of some sort, but still it's kind of getting rejected, for example, from the public. So you can start thinking about, is it really the goal that I want to go for? Is it the, I don't know, the path that I want to be taken? Because no one seems to be accepting me. It's like something is telling you here that it doesn't fit your collective brand. I'm not generating income out of it. This is not how we do things in this community. And they want you to be performing in different ways. And, sometimes people tell me that, oh, Victor, you talk too much and your videos are too long and I don't have time to listen to it. But this is how I am put together. This is how my fifth house functions. My fifth house ruler is in Sagittarius. So I love expressing myself in a long way because I feel like maybe every single sentence is going to teach you somehow, right? And yes, I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. The fifth house is going to teach you about that you cannot be everyone's cup of tea. But you don't need to be staying in a lane for the sake of others so that you get socially accepted. And this is exactly what the full moon is going to illuminate in your chart. You know, I don't have to be fitting into a traditional hierarchy system. What's good in being accepted by a massive like amount of people if I feel like that I'm suffocating my own creative spirit? That was the point, right? I'm still gonna feel bad about myself. And Aries is trying to liberate you from all your self-worth issues. Or, Aries is whispering into your ears, don't do that creative project, you're not gonna make money out of it anyway. Aries is a little devil. So am I going to listen to that devil or am I going to still try to give it a go? You know. So of course, Mercury disposes Mars and Uranus conjunction in your fourth house. And what really happens with Pisces, that they are naturally really absorbent. They feel the pain of others. They want to help others. And maybe there is a chaotic moment happening in your family dynamics, and your first response is that I want to help. And Uranus and Mars says, can I actually save everyone? I have to be reviewing it. And maybe this is connected to your romantic life. I got a text message recently from someone that I have been sleeping with for the last 4 months. A bit of a soppy story. Oh, I don't know how to pay the rent, not asking money directly. Okay. But Cancer can be very manipulative. And I was thinking while I was preparing the material yesterday that, how interesting Mercury is squaring Aries. And I know that the little devil is telling me that, it's just a bit of a soap opera. And I don't need fifth houses in drama. And I don't need to be part of everyone's drama. I cannot save everyone, because I saved this person last month as well. Actually, but yeah, it was last month, or it was when Mercury went into Cancer on the very same day. So maybe it was June 1st. So we have to somehow stop giving away way too much of our energy to others, often just because we want to get a bit of an attention, Now, of course, maybe with that Mars and Uranus, for example, it's a sudden opportunity to sell a property of yours. Cancer can represent property. The fifth house is money made from properties. But it might be a client who is showing up, and then with Mercury, all of a sudden they start kind of like retracking, right? So they show doubts or hesitant, or they are asking even more questions, and so forth. So that's even a possibility there. So that's the Pisces rising sign. Oh. So there's one thing I usually don't understand is when I stop sharing the screen, then we have got this black screen happening here. What happens if hide? Here you go. I figured out how my face comes back. So, guys, this is the Mercury retrograde and a bit of a full moon, as well as a bit of a Uranus and Mars conjunction, which we have discussed in length a few days ago, maybe 4 days ago. So there's a lot more information available from me for the Uranus and Mars conjunction. The reason why it is connected to Mercury retrograde is because Mercury disposes that conjunction. And Mars moves into the sign of Gemini on the same day when Mercury goes retrograde. So therefore, this is an important conjunction that is going to be happening between Mars and Uranus. So does anyone have a question? I've got 5-6 minutes to answer any questions. If you guys have, then I'm very happy to answer them. But I only have got like 5-6 minutes, because then I'm gonna have clients coming up. So if you would like to have a reading with me, you are more than welcome. We have got 3 more days from my promotion, 30%, so about $100. You can have a reading with me in our consultation, or you can choose a 90-minute option or a 30-minute option if you only have got a burning question. Yes, and my schedule is pretty filled up right now until mid-July, so the earliest one is pretty much just around mid-July. I think after the 17th of July on top of my head. I'm a Libra rising, traveling from June 29th. Already had some travel things change, and I had some issues with my dad's health as well. So we'll go back to visit him as well. Yeah, so the full moon is happening in your 4th house, which is the house of a parent. And it is, and then you have got the Uranus-Mars conjunction in your 9th house, disruptions to travel plans, but also the 9th house is the health situation of a parent. So yes, health issues of a parent can cause a disruption in your travel plans, in your relocation plans, unfortunately. I'm traveling to my hometown ahead of some crazy drama that happened there. I know they will try to suck me in as soon as I arrive. Geminis and Pisces rising. Yeah, so let's just watch out for those dramas, because Pisces rising sign is often a sucker for any type of drama. And you know what they do with Pisces rising signs, because Cancer is on your 5th house cusp, they're going to pull the heartstring there with some soap opera, with some soapy stories. And Pisces is a sucker for that. And then they want to come and rescue. So, you know, Saturn was teaching us, Pisces rising signs, the last couple of years to be able to say no. So be very honest, Pisces. Have you learned to say no? Or is it still a struggle for you? You know, because Saturn goes through your rising sign, what, max 2 or 3 times in your lifetime, and that's it. Maybe if you are super lucky, because let's say you were born with Saturn in Aquarius, then maybe that's only going to be 3 times as well anyway. Okay, so at one point you're going to have to say no, you know, that's the bottom line. Hello forever to be. Aries, Sun and Moon as well, apart from the Libra rising. So what I usually recommend is, if you're a Libra rising, listen to the opposing sign as well. Some astrologers say listen to your sun sign as well as your moon sign. You know, from a moon, like if it's a full moon or a new moon, maybe I would be listening from the moon, but not so much. From the sun sign, you can actually listen to forecast as well. All right, guys, it was a pleasure. So we are going to be meeting on Saturday. I hope to see as many of you as possible live, because we are going to be really discussing the Jupiter in the sign of Leo, and that should be super exciting, right? I believe, yes, we are going to be meeting 4 or 4:30 Budapest, Hungary time, if you want to be kind of like remembering that. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you on Saturday. Bless you. Take care. Bye bye.